Welcome. Bruchim habayim. Welcome, and a special welcome to those English speakers who came especially for the conference from the United States and from Canada. 2 of the 3 lectures today will be held in English and 1 in Hebrew. The first one will be held in Hebrew. The topic of this session is Yiddish and Jewish education in the 20th century. Yiddish v'chinoch Yehudi במאה ה-20. Our first speaker is Dr. Adina Bar-El. I have her biography in Hebrew, and so I will read it in Hebrew. דוקטור עדינה בר-אל חוקרת בתחומים ספרות ילדים ביידיש בפולין, ספרות ילדים ביידיש בארגנטינה, ספרות ילדים בעברית, עיתונות ילדים, תולדות החינוך היהודי, החינוך היהודי בפולין בין שתי מלחמות העולם. במשך 8 שנים היא חקרה את נושא עיתוני הילדים היהודיים, היא אספה חומר בארכיונים ובספריות בישראל, בפולין ובאמריקה. אחר כך היא נסעה לארגנטינה עבור איסוף חומר על סופרים ומשוררים לילדים ביידיש. דוקטור עדינה בר-אל היא גם סופרת לילדים ולנוער, היא כתבה ופרסמה 16 ספרים, ספרי קריאה, היא גם חברה באגודת הסופרים ופעילה באגודת סופרי הילדים והנוער סומליון. היא כותבת ביקורות על ספרים ומשמשת גם כשופטת לפרסי ספרות לילדים ולנוער. דוקטור עדינה בר-אל היא מרצה במכללה האקדמית לחינוך אחווה. היא גם עורכת שנתון לענייני ספרות והוראתה. דוקטור בר-אל גם מייסדת ומנהלת מרכז לספרות ילדים ודידקטיקה בדרום בשם מסד. Adina Bar-El's topic of today's lecture is Eliazer Steinbäarg, children's poet and playwright. Eliazer Steinbäarg, משורר ילדים ומחזאי.
תודה, ותוספת קטנה, את עבודת הדוקטורט אני כתבתי בהנחייתו של פרופסור יחיל שיינטוך. אתמול במושב הראשון הזכירו המרצים הנכבדים את פועלו של שטיינבארג על רקע העיר צ'רנוביץ'. אני מבקשת לתרום את תרומתי הצנועה בהפניית זרקור ליצירתו לילדים בשירים ובמחזות. רוב השירים בעצם הם חשיפה ראשונה, כי הופיעו בעיקר בעיתוני ילדים ולא בספרים. כמובן אני צריכה להזכיר על רקע ההרצאה הבוקר על הארכיון של דוב סדן, שנעזרתי רבות בארכיונו של שטיינבארג פה בספרייה הלאומית. נתחיל בתולדות חייו. אליעזר שטיינבארג נולד בעיירה ליפקן ובסרביה בשנת 1880. משם התפרסם שמו בכל הסביבה כמחנך עברי יידי בעל שיטת לימוד מיוחדת, ובעיקר היה ידוע ככותב משלים. בקיץ 1920 עבר לגור בעיר צ'רנוביץ. בצ'רנוביץ שבין שתי המלחמות, כמו ברומניה כולה, הייתה אוכלוסייה מורכבת ממיעוטים שונים, וביניהם אוקראינים, גרמנים, יהודים, וכן ארמנים, צוענים ועוד. צ'רנוביץ, כפי ששמענו גם אתמול, עם קרבתה הגיאוגרפית לבסרביה ושכנותה לפולין, והעיקר כעיר היחידה עם ארגוני עובדים יהודיים, נעשתה מרכז לתרבות יהודית. הקהילה היהודית הייתה מגוונת, היו בה ציונים, בונדיסטים, חסידים, מתבוללים. עם הגיעו לעיר נעשה שטיינבארג עד מהרה לאחד הפעילים המרכזיים בקולטור פדרציה של היידישיסטים בעיר. שלמה ביקל, עיתונאי, מסאי ומבקר ספרות, שהיה ידידו של שטיינבארג, כותב בהקדמה לכרך משלים שלו, שיצא בתל אביב מהדורת 1956, שהוא הפך למעין רבי עם חצר כנגד רצונו ועל אף צניעותו. מאות בחורים צעירים מעיירות במחוזות בסרביה, בוקובינה ומרמר וסיגט שלחו לו כתבי יד שלהם, והם הגיעו אליו גם בעצמם. הוא היה קורא את כתבי היד, מדריך את הצעירים בכתיבה ומתקן שירים וסיפורים. הנה אנחנו רואים פה שקף עם החברים, עם אנשי ספרות, וזהו שלמה ביקל, ידידו המבקר, וזה כמובן שטיינבארג. ביקל כותב שהצעירים היהודים אימצו את משלי שטיינבארג כשם שאבותיהם אימצו פרשה בחומש עם תרגום רש"י או האגדות החביבות של עין יעקב. מלבד בהופעות שלו בפני קהל מצומצם או רחב, הושמעו משלב גם בפי אומנים מקצועיים, בערבים ספרותיים ובתיאטראות, כפי שראינו אתמול בסרטו של סנדלר. הרץ גרוסברד דקלם את המשלים עוד בחייו של שטיינבארג. כישרונו והאינטרפרטציות של שחקן זה תרמו להפצת המשלים ולהחדרתם ללבבות. כפי שמעיד ההיסטוריון צבי יעבץ בספרו האוטוביוגרפי צ'רנוביץ' שלי, שיצא ב-2007, נשמעו המשלים ביידיש של שטיינבארג גם בשנים לאחר מותו, מפיהם של שני אומנים גדולים בני צ'רנוביץ', האחד היה המשורר הנודע פאול צלן, והשני היה לייבו לוין, קריין, זמר ומלחין. שטיינבארג עסק גם בתרגום. בין השאר הוא תרגם את שירי ביאליק ליידיש, עמו גם התכתב. בשנת 1914 הוא ביקר את ביאליק באודסה, וזה התלהב ממשליו ותכנן להוציאם לאור בהוצאת מוריה עם שותפו י"ח רבניצקי, אך מלחמת העולם הראשונה קטעה תוכנית זו. והנה בארכיון שלו יכולתי לעקוב אחרי שלבי התרגום. פה אנחנו רואים שהוא לקח את הספר של ביאליק בעברית, גמדי ליל השיר, ותרגם בשולי הספר. אחר כך שלב ב' היה שהוא העתיק את זה בכתב ידו, ליליפוטלך, ואחר כך הוא כמובן גם הדפיס את זה והמשיך. למרות שכתב מאות יצירות, יצא לאור בחייו רק קובץ אחד ובו 12 משלים, תחת הכותרת דורך דיברין, ב-1928. זה היה ספר בפורמט גדול, דמוי גמרא, בצירוף ציורים של ארתור קולניק, רק 120 עותקים נתפסו. והנה יש לנו פה את הפורטרט שיצר ארתור קולניק. בנוסף לכך יצאו לאור שני כרכים, שני אוספים גדולים יותר של משלב. האחד בצ'רנוביץ בשנת 1932. שטיינבארג עצמו אסף וערך את החומר, אולם הוא נפטר כאשר הספר היה בדפוס והוא לא זכה לראותו. רק 24 שנים אחר כך יצא לאור כרך משלב השני בעריכת דניאל לייבל בתל אביב 1956. ועתה לנושא המרכזי, שטיינבארג והילדים. מה משך אותו לעולם הילדים? לא ידועים פרטים על ילדותו של שטיינבארג, הוא מעולם לא כתב על כך ואין עדויות שהוא דיבר עליה. הוא ורעייתו רבקה היו חשוכי ילדים. שטיינבארג הגדיר את עצמו, כפי שכתוב בתחילת הכרך השני של משלב, כיתום בין יתומים. כדי להמחיש את יחסו לילדים ואת הבנתו את עולמם, אקדים ואספר אפיזודה קטנה שמזכירה ורה הקן, סופרת ומשוררת, בספרה קינדר יורן, יוגנט יורן, מת אליעזר שטיינבארג. בתל אביב זה יצא לאור ב-1969. האפיזודה שהיא מספרת. בחודש ינואר 1920, בעיצומו של חורף קר, עברה בחשאי משפחה קטנה את הגבול בין אוקראינה לרומניה. ההורים וילדתם ורה חצו את הדניאסטר, ולאחר טלטלות וחרדות בדרך, הם הגיעו בחשכת הלילה אל העיירה ליפקן בחבל בסרביה. הם התקבלו בחמימות בביתם של אליעזר ורבקה. אליעזר פנה אל ורה, שאחזה בידה את בובתה הסמרטוטית תמרה, ממנה לא רצתה להיפרד. מה שמה של ילדתך? שאל אותה. הילדה היפה הביטה באיש הנמוך, שהרכיב משקפיים עגולים על אפו, וחשה שהוא מבין ילדים. הוא לא שאל אותה מה שם בובתך, אלא ילדתך. אחר כך הוא הושיב את הילדה בת 9 על כיסא קטן שעמד לפני כיסא גדול, נתן לה עיפרון ודף נייר ואמר לה, כתבי ורוצ'קה, כתבי כל מה שעבר עלייך בלילות האחרונים. רבקה רעייתו התנגדה ואמרה, מה אתה עושה? הרי היא עייפה, עליה לשכב לישון. אולם בעלה ענה לה, תכף, היא בין כה וכה לא תצליח להירדם, עליה לכתוב כדי לאבד את הפחדים והבלהות שעברו עליה בעת מעבר הגבול. כלומר, כבר אז, בתחילת המאה ה-20, היה שטיינבארג מודע לחשיבות תהליך הכתיבה התרפויטית שהילדה צריכה לעבור. זו לא המצאה חדשה שלנו עכשיו. ועכשיו מסתבר שהוא היה מאוד מיודד לא רק עם ורה, פה אנחנו רואים שהוא הקדיש לה, היא באמת מגדירה אותו כידיד, ופה אנחנו רואים שהוא הקדיש לה שיר, הוא כתב לורה בת ה-13, ופה הזמן לגלות שוורה הקן היא ורה אלטמן, ביתו של אלטמן הסופר שאתמול הזכירו גם פה. ולא רק לורה הוא הקדיש שירים, אלא דוגמה לשיר שכתב לבנו של ביקל, של שלמה ביקל, לסנדי. אנחנו רואים פה שוב את ההקדשה, כן? סנדי ביקל, היתל אננטיקל. והוא הקדיש שיר לעוד, בעצם פה אנחנו רואים את יחסו לשני ילדים. השיר מוקדש, פה אנחנו רואים, רגע, פה אנחנו רואים למעלה, אני אגיד לכם בעברית, לריסלה רוזנבלט הקטנה, שמדברת, קוראת וכותבת יידיש כל כך יפה, הלוואי כל הילדים כמוה. עכשיו את הטקסט הזה מלווה איור של ילד מוכשר, מניוס קולניק, שכבר השתתף בתערוכת ציורי ילדים בפריז וזכה בפרס, והוא קרוב לוודאי בן ידידו הצייר ארתור קולניק. שטיינבארג טרח ושלח את זה למערכת גרינין כביימלך בווילנה עם המידע אודות הילד, והמערכת טרחה לספר את זה. שטיינבארגלנד. יצירותיו של שטיינבארג ביידיש לילדים נכללו במקראות ובספרי לימוד. מסתבר שהוא כתב יצירות רבות מאוד לילדים. אלכסנדר שפיגלבלט, שמאוד רציתי לפגוש אותו, אבל אתמול הוא לא היה ושמענו שירים שלו, במאמר שכתב במלאת 100 שנה להולדתו של שטיינבארג בדי גולדן קייט בגיליון 103, טוען ששטיינבארג היה בדלת האמות שלנו מין וולט דיסני, ובתנאים אחרים אולי היה בונה שטיינבארגלנד עבור ילדים יהודים. אוסף נרחב אחד, מייסלך סיפורים קטנים, יצא לאור בצ'רנוביץ' בשנת 1936, 4 שנים לאחר מותו. הסיפורים מלווים ב109 איורים של ארתור קולניק. שטיינבארג היה בעצם יוצר דו-לשוני, כמו שהיה בן דודו יהודה שטיינבארג ואחרים. הוא הקדיש את כתיבתו לילדים בעברית וביידיש. יצירותיו התפרסמו במחצית ראשונה של המאה ה-20, הן בעיתונים ביידיש כמו גרינין כביימלך הווילנאי, והן בעיתונים בעברית, אשכולות בבסרביה, עדן בניו יורק, וכן דבר לילדים ועיתוננו בארץ ישראל. וכמו שאמרתי וציינתי, העיתונים עזרו להנציח את יצירותיו לילדים. מלמד א' ב'. ההוכחה המשכנעת ביותר להתייחסותו הרצינית לשתי השפות היא פרסום 2 חוברות ללימוד קריאה וכתיבה לילדים קטנים. האחת בעברית עם הכותר אלפון, והשנייה ביידיש עם הכותר א' בייס. שתיהן יצאו יחד באותו זמן ובאותו מקום בשנת 1921 בצ'רנוביץ'. בשתי החוברות השיטה זהה. היא מבוססת בעצם על לימוד עברות בשיטה העממית הישנה של קמץ א' או, אבל משובצים בהן שירים מחורזים של שטיינבארג וכתרי פרוזה מעולם המציאות של הילדים, וגם בהתאם לדמיונם הפורה. לא נפקד גם מקומם של ההומור והנונסנס שתורמים לאווירה הנעימה של הלימוד והשינון. המקצב והצליליות העשירה של שטיינבארג עוזרים לילדים לקשר בין הכתוב לבין הנשמע, לדעת להגות נכון, לשנן שירים ולדקלמם וגם להתאמן בכתיבה. מלבד חג לאוזן, משמשות החוברות האלו גם חג לעין. הן מאוירות בידי טובי הציירים של צ'רנוביץ' שהיו גם ידידיו של שטיינבארג. את האלפון בעברית יהיה רובין זליקוביץ', הוא הצייר הידוע בארץ ראובן, ואת האלף בייס ביידיש יראו 3. ארתור קולניק, רובין זליקוביץ' ושלמה סלומון לרנר. והנה אני אביא לכם דוגמאות מתוך החוברת א' בייס. איך הוא מלמד את התנועה הוא, כן? ואני אראה לכם גם את הדף ליד. אני קוראת את השיר הנחמד שהוא שיבץ. מו מו מו, מו מו מו, פרן טויר שרייטה קו, אפנט אויף מיר, לוסט מחצו, zu mein Kälbele, mein Kleinem, zu mein Sundele, mein Scheinem. Ich will das Lecken, kischen will ich und ihm geben süße Milch. לי זה מזכיר את לפרה האדומה, יש עגלה קטנה חומה של פניה ברגשטיין, וזה באמת גם באותו מקצב טרוחי שמתאים לילדים קטנים. שיר אחר באותה חוברת א' ב' שבא ללמד את תנועות שונות של ג' גו, גו, גה, מוישלה קוישלה, מוישלה קוישלה יום פמפיר, גיין גנזלך אויף שפציר. steht der Horn auf heuchen Pleut und sein Mitzel feierreut. Roter Mantel, samme Gold und von unten mit der Trold. Tut die Gänser Covid on, Kukuriku, schreit der Horn. A gut Morgen, sagt der See, tun sie auch a Geschrei. Gu, 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 guten Tag, as zittert as der Dach. וכמובן שזה בעצם מה שאנחנו קוראים היום תומכות זיכרון ללמוד, ואת הגה וגו כל ילד יזכור אחר כך לנצח בזכות היצירה. באותו יש לנו פה את העיבוד של המשל המפורסם של העורב והגבינה, ופה הוא משתמש בו ללימוד חשבון, שיר ספירה. הפעם זה בהפחתות של 3. 10 Gänslech seinen Gewinn, 3 gegangen suchen sangen, seinen geblieben 7. 3 gegangen auf dem Spazier, seinen geblieben 4. 3 gegangen suchen nach Kehr, ist geblieben 1 nicht mehr. ופה, רגע, טוב, רגע, מה זה היה קודם? קודם זה היה א' ב', התבלבלת, זהו, אז טעות שלי. רק שנייה, אני אחזור. אוי. אז זהו. אז אני קראתי לכם את השיר הלא נכון, אז תסלחו לי. אז השיר הזה הוא א' ב' של קמץ א' או. א' בייס, אויפן בוים, השוורצה קרו, ונין מויל, השטיקל קז, Kamats Aleph O. Skotzel kommt, a Gast ist da. Es kommt das Fixel, macht a Knicksel und merät sich Zucker süß. Du bist schön und ich bin mies. Sing mir Kräule, sing a Liedele. Ich will spielen auf a Fidele. Tririra, schreit de Kro, kra. Fällt von Moll die Käse raus und das Meißele ist aus. סליחה שדילגתי במצגת על שיר אחד. יוצר תיאטרון לילדים. בזמנו בעת הגעתו של שטיינבארג לצ'רנוביץ' הוא פיתח ענף תרבותי חדש, תיאטרון הילדים. בין השנים 1920 עד 1928 הוא הנהיג העלאת מחזות ביידיש לילדים באחד מאולמות התיאטרון הגדולים בעיר. שטיינבארג עצמו כתב את המחזות והוא עצמו ביים אותם. הילדים על הבמה והילדים עם הוריהם באולם, הכל נהנו מן היידיש. בין מחזותיו יוסף מוקיר שבת, מחירת יוסף, אברהם אבינו, חלם, הרבי מברדיצ'ב, דרווייסר הון, התרנגול הלבן ועוד. במשך השנים בעיסוקו בתחום החינוך, בקייטנות קיץ לילדים ובהכשרת גננות בשפה העברייה, וגם כשהיה רק במשך 1.5 שנה מנהל בית ספר שלום עליכם בריו דה ז'נרו בברזיל, הוא חיבר מחזות וגם לקח יצירות של אחרים, ביניהם שלום עליכם וגולדפדן, איבד אותם והתאים אותם לעלות על במה של בית הספר. אז הנה דוגמאות למחזות שלו בכתב ידו שנמצאים בארכיונו, ממחשפה, לפי גולדפדן, ופה אנחנו רואים את הדף הראשון שלו בכתב ידו, ויוסף מוקיר שבת, שזה על פי סיפור עם יהודי. אבל לפני שנדגים את פעילותו בתחום זה כמנהל בית הספר שהוא גם מחזאי, נספר את הסיפור של ריו דה ז'נרו. הוא ורעייתו רבקה נסעו לשם במרץ 1928, ושטיינבארג שימש כאמור כמנהל בית הספר שלום עליכם בעיר. אך כבר בקיץ 1930 חזרו לצ'רנוביץ'. יש סברות שונות לסיבות לכך. האחת, רעייתו לא הצליחה להתרגל למזג האוויר הטרופי שהיה שם. למשל, ורה הקן כותבת שהיא כתבה כך במכתב אליהם. והאחרת, התנכלו לו והשמיצו אותו בעיתונות בברזיל, בעיקר היהודים הקומוניסטים. הם כינו אותו נציונליסט ריאקציונר. אבל לא משנה הסיבה, בזמן הקצר שם הוא תרם רבות, הן לבית הספר והן לקהילה היהודית כולה, והוא שלח משם גם לגרינים כבי מלאך יצירות ושירים שכתב לתלמידיו. אז הנה ייצוג לעבודתו כמנהל מחזאי בריו על פי מה שמצאתי בארכיון. פה יש לנו דוגמה להזמנה לסיום השנה הראשונה, כלומר הוא בעצם היה פה רק חצי שנה, לסיום השנה הראשונה בבית הספר, ויש פה את התוכנית המפורטת, והוא שיבץ בתוך המחזה גם את השיר דוס אינגלה ודוס הינטלה, והוא שלח את זה גם לגרינים כבי מלאך. דוגמה לשנה שנייה, המחזה בשנה הראשונה היה מוטל בן פייסי החזן, בעברית יותר קל לי, ושם הוא שיבץ באמת את השיר דוס אינגלה ודוס הינטלה, אז פה אנחנו רואים את זה בכתב יד, פה אנחנו רואים שהוא שלח את זה לגרינים כבי מלאך, ושוב עם הערה שזה חלק מהצגה בריו דה ז'נרו. הוא היה מאוד מאוד מיודד, כמו סופרים אחרים, עם שלמה בסטומסקי, עורך גרינים כבי מלאך, שעודד אותם לכתוב. וגם בסוף השנה השנייה הוא עשה חגיגה, והפעם הוא הציג את דר וייסר הון, כן? ופה אנחנו רואים את בכתב ידו, איך הוא כתב, וגם הוא שיבץ תווים. כלומר, ההצגות שלו היו עשירות ביותר, עם שירים משובצים, עם ריקודים ועם הכל. זה לגבי היותו מלמד א' ב' ויוצר מחזות. עכשיו ככל שהזמן ייתן לי, אני אראה לכם דוגמאות של שירים. יש לי זמן? אוקיי. הטנץ. אוי פשטיין זיצת הרתך מתחרן, זוג דר רתך, אתך בטך, סיס דר הימל azoi rein, לא מרביידה טנצן גיין. bald geworden is afraid, ungelaufen Kind und Kate, stanz הרתך מתחרן, wie sie läuft man das nicht sehen? Meschiches Zeit hat man gemeint, und man hat verfreit gewähnt. Ich bin euch dort gewesen, zugestubt hab ich sich schwer und hab euch gelost התרר. שיר אחר על הקומקום, פה המקצב הוא יותר פרוזאי, לא כל כך דרוכי. צ'ייניק. אוי פטיש שטייט הצ'ייניק מתהסר תי, ורסטות עם הריר, ברית זיך אופ ונחפת weg die Hand. Sagt der Chainik, jo, ich bin stark, ich steh Euven an und me schreckt sich vor mir. Ruft mich nicht Chainik, nur Herr Chainik, ihr hört? Später ein bisschen ist schon Herr Chainik gewesen ledig, kalt, und Josele hat ihm geklappt, tschim, tschom, tschom. עוד שיר כמה אחרון, טוב. Qua, 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 qua. Wer macht dort in Teichele Vernacht, dort in kleine Bettelech, fungelgrüne Blättelech, Jabe, Jabkelech verwoigen. Wer se will nicht ruhig liegen, habt das Schmitzel von dem Taten. Qua, 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 zu gesund, se soll nicht schatten. ויש לי עוד שיר אחד, שיר ספירה, בסדר? אוקיי. הפעם זה לא הפחתה אלא הוספה. 1 und 2 und 3 und noch 1 ist 4. Steht das Stiebele gebeugen, ohne Dach und ohne Tier. 4 und 1 ist 5 und noch 1 ist 6. Dort einmal gewohnt der Kotter, hat gebacken Gebäcks. Früher halten wir bei 6. 6 und 1 ist 7. Wegen dem Aschene Meise wollte die Katz geschrieben. 7, 8 und 9 und noch 1 ist 10. Kann die Katz sich nicht der Mannen, was und wo und wenn. טוב, יש לי פה עוד, אני רק אסכם ואומר שניתן להגדיר את שטיינבארג בצ'רנוביץ' כמו את י"ל פרץ בוורשה, דמות מעורכת, יוצר מרכז ספרותי, מעודד לכתוב יידיש, כותב גם לילדים ביידיש ובעברית. במרץ 1932, כאשר שטיינבארג הלך לעולמו, יצאה בת קול כמו בעת מותו של פרץ בוורשה, והודיע ל50,000 יהודי צ'רנוביץ' על מותו. כמו ששמענו גם אתמול, אלפים השתתפו בהלווייתו, פעילי תרבות, סופרים וידידים ספדו לו. ראשי הקהל הציעו שלאחר מותו ייקבר בקבר שיכבד את גדולתו כסופר, אולם על פי הצעת סופרי יידיש, קברו אותו בין קברים של ילדים שמתו בטרם עת ולא זכו ליהנות מסיפורים. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה לדוקטור עדינה בראל. האם יש איזו שאלה מהקהל? Okay, we're going to move on to the second lecture. I am proud to present Pafreidel Paamarantz Preidenreich, who has had an extensive professional career in the United States and Canada. She worked in a wide variety of formal and informal educational settings, including day and supplementary schools, universities, summer camps, adult education, youth movements, and national agencies. Prior to her aliyah, Pafreidel Preidenreich was Associate Director of JESNA, the Jewish Education Service of North America, where she also held positions involving research, consultation, liaison with other national agencies, curriculum development, and lecturing. In Israel, she worked as a consultant and teacher at Yad Vashem, at the Beit Berel Academic College, and Mofet, the umbrella agency of all teacher training programs in this country. Pafreidel has had many publications to her credit, including coordinating a series of 6 books commissioned by the Pentagon for use by U.S. military chaplains of all faiths around the world. Pafreidel Preidenreich has received numerous honors, including an honorary doctorate from the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, and she was named a Fellow of the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati, where the vast collection of material Pafreidel used in the writing of her latest work is being held. Her book, Passionate Pioneers, The Story of Yiddish Secular Education in North America, describes the hundreds of Yiddish secular schools and camps all across the United States and Canada during their heyday between 1910 and 1960. It is the result of a 10-year project published by Holmes and Meyer and will be available shortly. Her topic today deals with the period of research she undertook, covering all aspects of Yiddish secular schools and camps in North America during their heyday. The title of her lecture is Passionate Pioneers, Yiddish Secular Education in North America between 1910 and 1960.
Schönen Dank. Die weltliche jiddische Erziehung Bewegung, the secular Yiddish school or education movement, is the body, not unified unfortunately, was the body, not unified, that undertook to create in North America a system of schools and summer camps to answer the needs of the immigrants who had come from Eastern Europe to settle in these 2 countries and who wanted to continue and to advance the ideas that they brought with them from Eastern Europe. So the roots of this organization, which wasn't one organization, you know, we say there are 2 Jews and 3 synagogues. The roots of these organizations began in terms of their ideologies in Eastern Europe in the end of the 19th century, when so many of the isms that we know of were born. And the Jews that came, and others than Jews also, but we're talking today about the Jewish immigrants who came to North America, brought with them the concepts of secularism and Zionism and socialism in all its formats and communism and national diasporism and territorialism, etc., many. And from those groups developed a number of schools and camps, the number of which I found very shocking when I began to do the research. I must say that upon beginning this project, I had every hope that my background, which was one in these schools and camps, would serve me well and that I knew quite a bit about the subject, and indeed I did. But I knew very little in actuality. And only after I began to try to find material, which was a very difficult job, did I realize how much we don't know, how much there was, and how little that story has been told. Most stories begin with Amol is given, and those are also many fairy tales, but this is not a fairy tale. Fortunately, it was not a fairy tale, even though it had a kind of an ending that most fairy tales have, not always so pleasant. The groups that formed themselves into this overall larger body of weltliche Jiddische Erziehung Bewegung included the following groups, and there probably were a few other splinter ones, but they were really very minimal, so I'm not going to deal with them at all. They included and this is in the order of their chronological order of how their schools were developed, not in terms of any importance or not. The National Radical Schools, the Socialist Territorial Schools, the Labor Zionist Verband, the Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute, the Arbeitering, or the Workmen's Circle as it's known in English, a series of nonpartisan schools, so to speak. They were hardly nonpartisan, but they called themselves unparteiisch, nonpartisan schools, which were called sometimes nonpartisan Jewish workers' children's schools, nonpartisan workers' schools, nonpartisan children's schools, nonpartisan Arbeiteringsschulen, and they just proliferated for a very short time in order to try to pull together some of the strands of dissenting groups that were within their fold. There were communists, there were socialists, there were anarchists, there were territorialists, and they all somehow fell into some of these groups, so they decided to be nonpartisan, so to speak. They were quite left-wing, and at one point, when they began to fall apart, all of these schools either became members in the Arbeitering school system or in what was to become the IWO school system, International Workers' Order, Internationaler Arbeiterorden, which was a communist group that housed 17 different ethnic groups, of which the Jews were the largest. And they had a very large school system. At some points during this period of time, they had the largest number of schools of all of the Schulen, all of the Volksschulen, anywhere in the United States and Canada, and certainly in Europe by that time. I'd like to clarify some terminology and nomenclature just so that we're clear, because it can be very confusing. And I, who was really very involved in this, found it extremely confusing for a number of years till I could kind of straighten out who was who and who belonged to whom, and even then I found that there were many errors of my own. One would think that if the IWO camps, by and large, were called Camp Kinderland, as they are, and their adult camps were called Nitgedeiget, which they are and were, that if you said, I went to Camp Kinderland, you would think that you knew that it was an IWO camp. Well, far from it, because the first Camp Kinderland was in South Haven, Michigan, 1925, one of the very first Jewish camps, Yiddish secular camps that was founded. And as a matter of fact, the IWO Camp Kinderland that existed in New York State for many, many years began as an Arbeitering camp called Camp Kinderland. And after 3 years, in 1928, the communists kicked out what was left of the Arbeitering group. The Arbeitering group went across the lake and in good Jewish style opened their own camp called Camp Kindering, which is still in the same site and still exists. So it's very hard to think that we know when we're talking about names. The same thing is true with schools. There were Schulen. Most of the Arbeiterring Schulen were called Yud Lamed Peretz Schulen. At a certain point, the Arbeiterring took a decision that their schools would now be called, all of them, Yud Lamed Peretz schools, in honor of the famous writer. And you find, though, Yud Lamed Peretz schools in every other one of the school systems. You find the same thing true of the schools that took names of writers. There are many, many Avram Raisin schools, many, many Peretz Hirschbein schools, etc., etc. And you can't tell by the name of the school which group they belong to. And woe unto you who think that you can say that this and this school obviously was a Farban shul or was an IWO shul, because anybody who went there and it wasn't would be very upset, because politics played a very strong role in the identification of these schools and in what people thought that the school represented. And indeed, they represented many different things. The things that these schools had in common were primarily the Yiddish language and Yiddish literature. Everyone taught Yiddish language and Yiddish literature across the board. But not everyone taught all of the other subjects, including Jewish holidays. Up until about the 1940s, sometime even into the 50s, many of the IWO schools did not teach all Jewish holidays. Anything that smacked of religion, anything that smacked of Jewish tradition, which they considered to be religious, was left out. They only taught the holidays that they thought could be considered national and totally secular. That was true of the IWO schools and of many of the Arbeiterring schools for many years, until probably the Arbeiterring schools in the end of the late 1930s began to include more tradition. And of course, with the rise of the State of Israel, all of the schools began to introduce some Hebrew, began to be somewhat supportive of the State of Israel, where many of them had been anti-Zionist in the past, literally anti-Zionist, literally anti-religious, to varying degrees. Then we come to the Zionist schools, the Farban schools, and the Borachov schools, which were linke Polizien, split off from the general labor Zionist groups. They taught Hebrew from the very beginning and were very staunchly, obviously, pro-Palestine and then pro-Israel. And that was part of their program. So it's very hard to generalize and say Yiddish Volksschulen or Yiddish secular schools were all this or that. And one has to be very careful. And I find that in the general public and in general Jewish education and in research, they are often just lumped together. Yiddish secular schools were socialist or communist. I'm paraphrasing the quotes. They were anti-religious, they were anti-Hebrew, etc. Many were not. The one group among all of them that was totally apolitical and staunchly advocated their apoliticism was the Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute. They emerged 3 schools in about 1917, if I remember correctly, that were members of the National Radical Labor Zionist schools, decided that they did not want to be an ism kind of school. They wanted to concentrate on children, on Jewish education in the finest and most intensive sense, and they wanted to be not concerned with so many issues of social significance, of the worker, of the masses, of what was happening in Europe. They wanted to teach Yiddish, Yiddish literature, Jewish history, Tanakh, a little Hebrew, and so they broke away and eventually formed what was called the Sholem Aleichem Folks Institute, an apolitical Yiddish secular organization to teach Yiddish secular subjects with a traditional bent, etc. That was also the first group that founded the first Yiddish secular camp in 1918, Camp Boyberick. Now let me tell you that in the search that I made, I found 160 communities across North America that hosted Yiddish secular schools. And that is an enormous number. If you stop to think, as I did as I began to find more and more, that there were only about 10 or 12 large cities where one would think it was a natural thing for Yiddish secularists to have enough people to form a school or 2 schools. New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Montreal, Toronto. How many more could there have been, I thought? Maybe 25, and I thought I was being generous. When I found 50 and 100 and 125, I could barely contain myself. By the time I got to 160, I thought the heavens were going to open. I also found 39 what I call Yiddish secular camps. Now, I have to qualify by saying that there were many, many Jewish camps, many Jewish camps that were not particularly religious, and in my mind, not particularly Jewish. They may have had a Jewish owner, they may have had Jewish kids who came, they may even have lit candles on Friday night, but Jewish programming was really not their essence, and certainly not Yiddish. So I limited myself to only those camps where, certainly for the first 20, 30 years, Yiddish was the language of the camp. That changed slowly with the times, understandably so, but that was the criteria by which I judged whether or not to include these camps. And the 39 that I included all were, certainly in their origin, Yiddish-speaking, Yiddish-living, Yiddish-loving camps. They were all over, primarily in close proximity to some large metropolis where they could draw the largest number of children. And sometimes there were many children who would come who went to a shul of a different sponsor, but for many reasons, financial reasons, family reasons, location, they ended up in a different camp. It didn't matter. The common denominator of Yiddish songs, of Jewish experiences with the same kind of moral values, that was what held these camps together, even with people that had different political outlooks or ideologies. I also want to tell you that there were, to my shock, a number of agrarian communities, which I knew that there were such Jewish agrarian communities all over Canada and the United States, but there were 10 that I found, and I'm certain there were more, but I just didn't find the documentation, that had Yiddish secular schools. And I'd like to tell you that one of them, I picked out a very brief reading to tell you about a rather unique experience, but I think that it reflects a lot of the kinds of things that were happening in the other agrarian communities. This one is about Sainte-Sophie, Quebec. I had never heard of Sainte-Sophie, Quebec, but that doesn't mean anything. It's not near anything mostly that we would know about. It was what we would call in the Riches. And it was an agrarian community that existed from the beginning of the 20th century through the courtesy of Baron de Hirsch and the Jewish Colonization Association. And I'd like to read something to you that a well-known Canadian historian, B. Zaks, Z-A-K-S, visited several times and wrote, and I'm excerpting from his quotations and from the history and from documentation from the government of Quebec, written in French that I had to have someone translate for me. And it goes as follows. Prior to 1912, Jewish children in the agrarian community of Sainte-Sophie, Quebec, had to attend the French Catholic school where they learned catechism and Catholic prayers while kneeling. They had to drink from separate pitchers and use utensils set aside for their use. Sound a little familiar with other groups? They suffered abuse, including blows from other students as well as from teachers. One teacher showed her anti-Semitism and hate by insulting them constantly. The situation became intolerable when once, right before Erev Pesach, she sequestered all the Jewish children in a separate room and did not allow them to go home to prepare for the holiday. The children revolted, breaking the windows and jumping out, never to return. It was then that the Jews of Sainte-Sophie decided they would have to build their own school where their children could be safe and also receive a good Jewish education. In 1912, a Jewish all-day school was built. The Canadian Jewish historian B. Zaks visited the school several times and reported that the new one-room school had a very sparse, village-like appearance. It was modest, simple, but it was a Jewish school where children played and laughed and learned and spoke Yiddish. Two classes, one in general studies and the other in Jewish studies, met simultaneously in the single room. According to Zak, when the government non-Jewish district inspector visited, she declared such an arrangement, quote, a detriment to learning, end quote. The government then provided the money to build a second two-story structure nearby so that Jewish subjects could be taught to one class in a separate classroom at the same time as general studies were taught in the other. Zach was pleased to learn that the Jewish studies teacher had herself been a former student at the school. The school bore the name School of Scotland because the builder was Scottish and thought it an appropriate name for a school that he himself had constructed. But the Department of Education of the Provincial Secretariat in Quebec would not recognize this name and always referred to the school as the Jewish School of St. Sophie, even though there were non-Jewish children attending. School taxes were levied on all farmers whose children attended the Jewish school. These included Polish children, English Canadians, and Jews. The non-Jewish parents of the children who attended the Jewish school objected strongly. They argued that because Jews were not a separate, incorporated group, taxes paid by non-Jews should not belong to the Jewish school. But soon after, the school received a charter that incorporated Jews as a district entity. And after that, the school was able to collect all of the taxes. An ending to this story was that many years later, in 1927, the shoichet of the community was also the teacher, rather common in the agrarian communities where either the rabbi or the shoichet, they all did double duty because they didn't have enough money to pay for all the different functionaries. And the shoichet found that, as a teacher, that a number of students were not attending the Jewish studies part of the class. So at a school board meeting, a decision was taken that anybody who did not send their child to the Jewish part of the school as well as to the secular part of the school would not receive services of the shoichet. And that was a very serious problem. So it seems that the school board was not above using blackmail to make sure that there were enough students to be in the classroom. That vignette from St. Sophie is repeated in many different ways in almost all of the 10 agrarian communities that I investigated. And you should know that they weren't just where you might think they would be. There was one in Centerfield, Utah, that the Mormons of the area helped support. It's a very strange and interesting story. All of these places where Jews went who were previously not farmers, didn't know how to farm, most of them failed, by the way, didn't have a clue as to what to do with the land or with the materials or the lack of materials that they had. And yet the first thing that they did after they established their tents at first and their little chicken coops later, they formed Yiddish schools so that their children could have a good Jewish education. Many of them fell apart because of politics. The communists couldn't agree with the socialists didn't agree with the Zionists, and at the end it was ois, which is too bad, but it seems to be something that happens in Jewish life for all of us. The thing that helped create the atmosphere around which these schools and camps were able to exist was that in America and in Canada, they found opportunities that they had never found before, despite the difficulties and despite the work that they had to put in a great deal outside of building the shul. Nobody worked full-time in the shul. The teachers who worked there worked, but didn't get paid full-time salaries either. Mind you, I take that back, because many of them, for many, many years, were not only teachers, they were principals, they were janitors, they opened and closed the school, they collected the tuition, they spoke to parents, they were the community liaisons, multitasked people who barely made a living, and many of the teachers in the beginning also were the literati of Yiddish cultural life. Peretz Hirschbein taught in Calgary, where he met his wife, who was also a teacher, Esther Shemyacher. Avram Reisen taught in the shul. Professor Knox taught in the shul. I don't think Bickel did that I found, but Apatashu, Auerbach, I could go on and list a full range of people, all of whom taught in the shul, not only because it gave them a little extra salary, which they needed because they didn't make a living doing what they would have loved to continue doing, but because they firmly believed that the important thing was to create conditions for hemshech, for continuity, so that their type of Yiddishkeit which many others would not agree with, but which I think many people in this room would agree with. Their type of secular Yiddishkeit was the kind that they wanted their children and their grandchildren to be able to understand, to enjoy, and to participate in, so that it would remain alive in some way further on. And we found that there were at least, and again, I can't say exactly because I'm sure there are some out there that were never reported and I could never find them, there were at least 1,000 such shuls and 39 camps. The uniqueness of these schools and their contributions and what remains of their history in Jewish life is that they created models that did not exist previously in any form of Jewish education, even though the formats were similar. They had afternoon schools, supplementary schools, what we called Ofenschulen. They had Mittelschulen, high schools. They had Pro-Mittelschulen, bridging the gap between elementary and high school, especially for children who had not had much elementary shul experience. They had teachers' courses, in-service courses for professional teachers, even a few teacher seminaries, one in Canada and one in America, in New York. And they had some unique features which were really notable that I just want to comment on. One of which was this business of year-round education. There was no such concept that shule, school, was from September to June, and that's the end. A child was supposed to go to school and then go right to camp. The slogan of all of these were von Schul in Camp and von Camp in Schul. Clearly, you find banners emblazoned with this slogan. They also believed in what I would call a ladder of Jewish education, from cradle to the grave. They started early childhood programs, many in places that didn't have them even in the secular world. Even kindergartens, when they existed outside of Jewish schools, many of them were not mandatory in many states in the United States and not in the provinces in Canada. And the early childhood programs were very successful and were really models. And the adult education programs were phenomenal. Every single shul that I found had adult education programs. They had lectures with visiting lecturers. They had courses. The local teacher principals would all give courses. That was part of the job expected. And many of them were not courses in subjects of Jewish content. They tried very hard in the early years to help Americanize or Canadianize the immigrants who came. They also did something that today is known as confluent education. I'm sure they didn't know the term then, but instinctively, intuitively, they knew that to be a really good teacher, to really have an effect on the children, you have to teach more than the cognitive knowledge. You have to affect their hearts. You have to get into their skins and help them feel in an experiential way that they are part of the Jewish people, that they have connections to Jews all over the world, that they have responsibilities as Jews, even young children. We sang songs about the importance of helping the poor, the importance of standing on the guarding line of the revolutionary, not necessarily communist revolutionary, the revolutionary forces that are going to create a better world, tikkun olam, which we didn't talk about as tikkun olam at that time. How much time do we have? 1 more minute. Oh, okay. So we have those 3 things. We also had co- and extracurricular activities, music, unbelievable, choruses, all kinds of instrumental courses that were given, violin, mandolin, orchestras just were proliferated all throughout. They had children's theaters built, 1928 in Detroit, next to an unparteiische shul. They built a theater called Tilig. We have photographs, I have pictures with extensive costuming and scenery that show how these children were performing in Yiddish. They also existed also in California. It existed in Chicago. They cared about all aspects of the child's life, and they tried to do something about it, and this had an impact that was lasting. They also had publications and conferences, which was very unusual in those days. Children wrote material, and they were published. And I have lists of hundreds of publications, local and national. They also had conferences where children traveled to conferences outside of their own city and state, kids of 8 and 9. We have photographs as documentation. So they really did some things that were very, very unusual. And if someone wants to ask a question during the question period about what happened to these schools and camps, I'll have time to tell you.
Thank you, Freido. Does it? Yes, Vladislav? There are lots of people.
Jesus.
Could you please tell us where and how did you collect this moving and most interesting data that you just shared with us?
Not easily. I visited, I don't know, I would say probably a dozen libraries and archives all over the United States and Canada, and spent as much time as I could in them since I didn't live in America either at the time. I interviewed over 40 people who either themselves had been products of these schools or whose parents perhaps had been or taught in the schools or in camps as well. When I say schools, I really should say schools and camps. And I sent out a questionnaire at first to about 25 people that I knew had been products or had these experiences, and each one supplied other names, and I ended up with over 800 responses to this questionnaire, which gave me a lot of data, perhaps not scientifically qualified by number, but certainly important in terms of their own responses and their own evaluations, which I counted as being historically accurate. It may have been a self-selecting group because people who were recommended and who answered obviously had an interest in the subject. Nonetheless, even if there were 800 others who didn't think that way, these 800 made an impression on me. So it was a long, painstaking process, and every time someone found another place and another school that I never heard of, another community I never heard of, Hurleyville, New York, had a shule, Shalom Aleichem shule, built a house, two-story house, built 70 students for a number of years, serving 11 communities in the Catskills. I never heard of Hurleyville, New York, never even thought that such a shule could have existed there, and they brought theater groups from New York for the adults to have entertainment. It's just a fascinating story. For me, it was fascinating.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have lots of questions, but I think I'll have to read the book.
I can't see you, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's Debbie.
Oh, hi, Debbie.
But I do want to ask one question. I was wondering why you ended in 1960, whether that was arbitrary or whether there was some event or trend. And it made me think that perhaps in the late 40s and early 50s, some of the schools and camps were affected by McCarthyism, and if that had any effect.
Yes, and yes, and yes. There was a deliberate ending to the story, but not my own. The 50 years that I chose were really the heyday, and already 1950 to 60 there was already a decline. Even in the late 40s the decline started. And what I wanted to say and didn't have time to tell you were very quickly the reasons for the decline, which I will give in, I hope, in a half a minute. They were both external and internal, and I think everyone can understand them. The external ones were, of course, the Shoah, and the result of the Shoah, which is catastrophic for all Jewish communities, but particularly also for American Jews and for American Jewish Yiddish secularists. It was a life that they were trying to emulate in a way, I don't mean exactly, but to recreate in a living form for their students, and it existed no longer. And that was a trauma. There also was a drying up of all the teachers who had come, and primarily the teachers who serviced these, who provided positions in education in America and Canada came from Europe by and large, so that was another reason. The rise of the State of Israel, which was, of course, wonderful and marvelous, was really you should pardon the expression, a nail in the coffin in a way, because Hebrew became such an important and exciting and charismatic draw to Israel and to connecting with the Jewish people. And Yiddish was now the language of the immigrants and the foreigners, and Americanization and Canadianization didn't include that, and included connecting with the new Sabra. And from my perspective also, perhaps one of the most important reasons was the post-World War II move to the suburbs. There was no longer a Yiddish Gas, which was first and foremost the stomping grounds of secular Jews. And the synagogues and the Jewish community centers became the center of Jewish life in the suburbs. And you had to be like your neighbor. And the Christians belonged to churches, and they'd say, what church do you belong to? And also, are you having, they knew already what a bar mitzvah was, the Christian. You're having a bar mitzvah? Where? And people began sending their children to these schools, even those who didn't believe, even those who didn't want to go to services. And I'm not downing them at all. I think it's very nice to identify with something Jewish if you can, whatever it is. But these were people who would have probably, had the schools been able, the shulim been able to maintain a critical mass in the suburbs, they would have chosen to do that because it was closer to their own ideological outlook. And the internal ones, just one second, were the lack of the ability to unify, which they tried over and over again, but just never worked. And the fact that they were unable to reproduce from the few seminars that they had enough teachers to be able to do it, and that English crept in more and more and more, and there were no grandparents and no parents. Certainly the home environment wasn't conducive to Yiddish in that way. The interest was just gone. So by 1960, things were really downhill, and today there are some mostly one-day-a-week Sunday schools, a few two-day-a-week schools, but they're not the kind of schools that I'm talking about. They teach a smattering of Yiddish here and there, some Yiddish songs, celebrate holidays, all well-intended and really trying to do something, but it's not the genre that I'm discussing.
Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. It's Ellie.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi.
A product of the Shalom.
I'm a product of one of the school systems that you described, and very proud of it. I think the last point you made about some recent attempts to keep some form of Yiddish education going in various places in the United States. It must be seen in reference to your earlier remarks about how the schools in their heyday never were isolated efforts. They were plugged into teacher seminaries, to Jewish education committees. Curricular materials were produced together. There were teacher enrichment programs and so on, and that was a crucial. The educational, the pedagogical infrastructure was crucial to the heyday that you described, and that no longer exists, and therefore it's very clear that the kind of school that you described could not exist today. The other thing that I do want to offer, in reference to the question that was raised earlier about where to find materials, it's worth mentioning that at Stanford University there is an archive of such materials.
I worked there for over a week.
I'm sure you did. At primary documents from the various Yiddish secular schools that existed in the United States and Canada. And finally, one last remark is that, with all due respect, and I have tremendous respect, obviously, if you were to look comparatively at the Yiddish schools, particularly day schools, that were developed south of the border in Mexico and in South America, you would see right away the chasm that existed between the Yiddish shulen in the United States and Canada, even in their heyday, and what was done by our cousins south of the border, who were not sending their children to the public school system, and indeed, if one had to sum up the Yiddish shulen in the United States in terms of the wider educational world of Jewish families and even the Jewish educational world, one must, the Unterste Shure, they were always marginal, and they were never more than marginal.
With the exception of Canada, I have to say that's very true of the United States, where there were only 4, maybe 5 Jewish day schools, all told in that period, that were able to get off the ground and struggle. One still exists in New York. However, in Canada, the situation was different, and that speaks to your issue, Ellie. It's very similar to, I don't know enough about Mexico and South America, except to know how successful their Yiddish day schools were. But in Canada, the attitude towards minorities and towards ethnic groups was very different in all the provinces, particularly in the few where there were really established, well-established Yiddish secular day schools. In Montreal, for example, there were 2 Verband labor Zionist day schools in the same city, and Montreal's not that large. I happen to teach at both of them a little bit, so I know something about them. And in Toronto and Winnipeg and in Edmonton and Calgary, they all had day schools that were really, really successful and produced hundreds and thousands even of students. The Yud Lamed Peretz in Winnipeg celebrated a 90th anniversary just a few years ago with phenomenal essays written by people who attended, etc. So in that sense, they had a more similar background and with Mexico and South America, where the government schools were different enough and there was enough support that they could do that. In America, the public school was holy, and immigrant Jews wanted to support the public schools. It wasn't just that they couldn't do otherwise. You felt un-American if you weren't going to send your kid to a public school. And the day school movements, other than the ultra-Orthodox yeshivas that really got started, the modern Hebrew day schools, had a lot of trouble garnering support and parents to send their kids only when they became kind of private schools and it became something special to send your kids, or the public schools became not good in the city, in the inner city, and then the schools began to flourish more. But you're absolutely right, that but the difference, I think, is in what the environment allowed the schools to create.
Okay, thank you, Freido. I'm sorry we don't have enough time for more questions. Our next speaker is Chana Pauline Galai. Chana founded and completed one of the first undergraduate Yiddish majors at Columbia University. She has worked at the National Yiddish Book Center as a visitor's guide and educator, at Yiddishkeit Los Angeles as Director of Education, and is currently the Pedagogical Director at Beit Levik in Tel Aviv, where she teaches Yiddish language and culture classes to elementary school students. In conjunction with both Yiddishkeit LA and Beit Levik, she is working on a Yiddish textbook for the elementary level. She was a Fulbright scholar in Vilna, where she studied Holocaust survivors who have lived in Lithuania to this day, the topic of her recently completed MA thesis. The topic of her lecture today is Communicative Yiddish for Young Learners, New Teaching Methods and Materials for Elementary School Students. Chana.
Shalom Aleichem Alamin. Don't worry, I won't go over time because I have a 2-month-old baby waiting for me outside. The quest for how to teach and transmit Yiddish seems to define much discussion and activity surrounding the language today. Yet it is not a new project. In 1922, almost a century ago, Yaakov Levin, author of the famous Yiddish primer, Der Anfänger, wrote, Mit a Jahr 6 zurück ist reust das Bichel neue Yiddische Schule, erster Teil. Von dem bis jetzt ist weg bis 60.000 Exemplaren von Ort dem Bichel. Das beweist, als in a sa Bichel ist gewinn aber derfenisch. Und in der Emission ist es in jener Zeit, laut der allgemeinen Anerkennung, gewinn in viele Hinsichten ein Schritt voraus im Vergleich mit die alle anderen jüdische Anfängerlehrbücher. Jetzt aber ist schon die neue jüdische Schule erster Teil sicher mehr wie verältert. Die Forderungen von der jüdischen Schule und von dem jüdischen Lehrer seien vor der Zeit ausgewachsen. This intro, in which Levin pronounces the need to innovate methodologically for the sake of the Yiddish language, sounds almost like what we could say today about Uriel Weinreich's textbook, College Yiddish, and the need to create new methodological directions for passing on Yiddish to the next generation. And I've come here all the way from Tel Aviv with my baby to propose one such direction. But before I describe this methodology to you, I'd like to tell you a little bit how I've come to teach Yiddish. Only through the collaboration of different Yiddish organizations, which I also believe is a very important point for the future of Yiddish. I think that collaboration between different Yiddish organizations, we've just heard from Pfreidel about the trouble that the Yiddish secular schools ran into in North America, each school just looking out for its own. And the project that I'm working on now and that I've been working on for the past few years is, I'm proud to say, a collaborative effort between, first and foremost, Beis Levikois in Tel Aviv, Dore Hemshech Ove YiDiSH, Tel Nordau, a secular school in Tel Aviv, which is just a regular school, and Yiddishkeit Los Angeles, which is way back in Los Angeles, as you can tell by the name. I started teaching an after-school elective through Beis Levik with children from Tel Nordau, a school nearby in Tel Aviv. And the school principal, after 1 year of seeing this elective, was so impressed by the children's enthusiasm that he invited me to come into this regular school day at their elementary school and teach a full grade level of children Yiddish as part of their required curriculum. So this meant 50 children every week had to learn Yiddish, had to get a grade. The parents had to answer to me everything that you can wish for, basically. And to do that, of course, though, I realized I had to have material to teach, and so Yiddishkeit Los Angeles has helped fund me creating a new textbook with full illustrations, and I'll discuss an example from this later. So, now to the methodology. I call what I do with these children communicative Yiddish, by which I mean both teaching children to actually communicate something that they want to say in the language, and also using the language to communicate something valuable to them in a contemporary context. I've based this idea on a fairly new, but now widely spread, language learning approach called communicative learning. And the basic idea behind communicative learning is that everything that the children do has to mean something. There's no drilling, there are no sentences without meaning. You don't write grammatical charts on the board. Everything that the children do has to mean something, and through by trying to gather and give information and create meaningful experiences, the children learn the language. And the means is essentially the end. By learning, they are enjoying themselves, they enjoy Yiddish, they have memorable experiences, so they don't ask you, why are we learning this language? Because they're so busy enjoying themselves, ideally. So to give you an example of what I mean by communicative Yiddish and the way that my textbook works and will work as I work on it further, I've distributed several pages that I hope you all have in front of you. It's from the second chapter of the book, which is about, it's called In Shul. I'll show you the cover here for those who can see this far. And the first page that you see, it's the third page of the chapter, and it's a section, an ongoing section that I hope to have in every chapter of the book. It's called Amatone von Rivkin, Rivka Basman, the local poet, Yiddish poet in Tel Aviv, who she's offered to write a short appropriate poem for each chapter. But I don't just present the poem to the children. Everything they do has to have an exchange of information, and everything that every exercise, every lesson is active. So here is the poem that she's written, with words missing and illustrations to help them understand what the word is. And this poem, this exercise, was accompanied by a visit by the poet herself, who she came into the classroom, read the poem aloud to the children without them reading, read it to them again while they're looking at the page, so that they can learn the words from the pictures and fill it out. So again, the children have a memorable experience. They're connected to authentic Yiddish culture, authentic contemporary Yiddish culture. And yet it's quite simple and visual, and I think accessible. On the next page, you can see it's the fairly classic conversation, "Was machst du?" And I have just 2 model conversations. The conversations are written between characters, Moish, Adam, Chava, Pesye, who are characters that appear throughout the textbook that the children come to recognize by the illustrations, so that they feel like they're actually hearing a conversation between people that they know or they can imagine, rather than just stam conversations. And then here on the right are the target words, the different responses to "Was machst du?" And they're accompanied both by visual illustrations to explain to them what the different responses mean, and also numbers, so that I can also practice numbers through this by asking them, coordinating 10 with sehr gut und 0 mit sehr schlecht und so weiter. And so the children, after going through and doing several conversations, we then you can see below is a section that I've called Statistik. And one student comes up to the front of the class, and another one comes up and asks, "Was machst du? Wie viel Talmidim seien gut?" And all the students who think that they're doing well that day raise their hand, and this one student fills out the chart, a bar graph. They call it something else here, I forget. And so on, so that the children also connecting what they're learning in Yiddish to what they're learning in math class. And again, they use numbers, viful, so it's using lots of different skills, using the same pieces of simple language that they can actually learn. It's not above them, in lots of different contexts, in lots of different ways, always meaningful and always active. And then on the last page that I've shown you, page 5, Wo lernen wir sich? This is, again, it's the lexical goal is to teach lernen sich, to say what they're learning, where they're learning. And also, but there's a cultural side to it, and that's to say, because the children are genuinely curious. Who else learns Yiddish? I know I have friends that go to other schools and in other grades, and my parents never learned Yiddish. Why are we learning Yiddish? Who else learns Yiddish? So here's the answer. So I have ich lerne sich in a Volksschule, and I have a picture of a student who studies at Tel Nordau, their school. So they say, okay, we're part of this group of people who study Yiddish. Zwei, wir lernen sich in a yeshiva, and this is an authentic archival photograph from Yivo with Yivo's permission, and to say that in yeshivas and in chadorim, students also study in Yiddish, and of course the students in Tel Aviv are somewhat familiar with our Orthodox religious school system, though they go to a secular school, so this sparks an interesting discussion about that. Drei, wir lernen sich in a Mittelschule. It's not a very successful photograph, but this is a picture of my former students in Los Angeles, where I used to teach before I made Aliyah. And then wir lernen sich in an Universität. My friend David, who's studying at Columbia. And so this gives the students an answer to the question, again, of both doing two things at once, both teaching the language and answering their questions of why are we doing this, why is this meaningful, who else does this, and then also they can, of course, at the end, add themselves and say where they're studying, wo lernst du sich, and connect themselves to the bigger picture of studying Yiddish. So this is the example of what I'm doing with the children during the day. Again, this is part of their required school day. And now I'd like to show you, and I by the way, I find it very successful. The principal asked me to take on another grade level. Were I not on maternity leave right now, I'd be taking on another grade level, but as soon as I go back, I'll be continuing with these students at their request. Now, I'd like to show you an example of a short film that we've done. It's going to be exactly on time, pinklich, 10 minutes. It's a film. This is an example of what I do with the children during their required school day, and this short film is an example of something that we did with them at Beis Leivik after school. It's a film, L'Kovid Chanukah. I think that you'll all understand that. There's translation to Hebrew, I think everyone will understand. Enjoy.
Mandel im Hochers vor ihm, Sholom Aleichem und Jud Lamed Peretz, der Klassiker sehr schön. Wie viel kommt euch? Mit der Noche, Yaakov et Chanukah, 20 Grosch. Nadir. Dank. Freilichen Chanukah. Freilichen Chanukah. Kommt herein der Sturm. Schöne Sonne. Schöne Sonne. Entschuldig, Mirin, gell? Ja. Schön durch, ja?
Ja, sehr schön, aber...
Aber was?
Nicht viel Geld.
Nadir, eine Tonne von uns.
Wer? Danke. Mit dem ganzen Auto. Freilichen Chanukah. Seid gewünscht, gute Menschen.
Schön Kind.
Ja, schön Kind.
Nur schön Chanukah. Oi, Beileshi. Wein nicht.
Ich will ein Kind.
Ich will. Wow, was ist das? Ein Dreidel. Beileshi, gib a cook. No, lass mal spielen.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom.
Wer seid ihr? Ich heiß Dobke, die Dreidelfee.
Und ich heiß Dov, der Dreidel Machashef.
Wir wollen helfen.
Helfen?
Ja, helfen.
Mit was? Mit das. Was ist das?
Die Sache, was ihr wollt.
Kinder.
Kinder?
Ja.
Aber
Oi, mir helfen euch.
darft ihr helfen andere.
Wie soll?
Mit dem Dreidel wird in vornen Zeit.
Wenn ihr darft hilf, Dreidel.
Die Oises, oben spezielle Keuches. Nur gib 3.
Soll sein mit der Fluche. Wow, die Brüder Maccabi. Wir wollen gewinnen!
Witz, Yehuda. Ich heiße Antiochus. Ich bin der stärkste König auf der ganzen Welt. Der Nizochen wird sein unseres. Der Hager der Yidin-Chevre. Sein Gesund, zu der Ideen.
Oi weh, ich hab nicht genug Koyach.
Oi gesund, Ihnen.
Oi weh, ich darf Sie helfen. 30, 3 3, 3 3, 3 3. Null. Als die Griechen sollen wäre null.
ניצוחה! עם ישראל חי! הנס! ישר כוח ברל. בלה, it's this dein Rei.
הפעם הזה הוא גוטה. הפעם הזה הטופ של תל אביב. ובאים אליו מבעד ים חולה.
Saft seid ihr so gut.
Man rennt schon noch um den Äpfel.
Äpfel.
7 Shekel. Noch etwas für deine Chaverin?
Nein, verdammt. Ich habe nicht kein Chaverin.
Nur sei gesund.
Ihr euch.
קראתי על עיר חדשה בעיתוני הערב, החלטתי שאסע לשם, אמצע קצת אהבה.
Wow, wo bin ich? Was ist immer das?
Wer ist das? Solche modne Kleider.
Hallo Sure, was machst du? Das redet Eliezer, willst vernommen? Nein, ich verstehe. Nur Meile.
Seht euch so ent, so treurig.
Empfängt nichts, nur Meile. Benjamin, was machst du? Willst spielen Fußball mit mir Heinz? Ja. Nein, bist vernommen, ich verstehe. Ich bin so alt, ich habe nicht kein Chaverim.
Man muss ihm helfen. 30 3. Gimmel, ganz. Sein Leben werden ganz und freilich.
Hallo, Sure? Sure?
Hey, Eliezer, willst du spielen?
Hi, Simon, was machst du? 1 Minute, Emetzer klingt. Ja, Rivka, was machst du? Ganz gut.
No, willst du spielen oder nicht?
Ja. Sei gesund.
יישר כוח, פלא. wird mir euch, als Eliezer ist nicht so el. Mazel tov und ist werden alle Chaloimes werden Emes. Fröhlichen Chanukah.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעושה ניסים לאבותינו
בימים ההם בזמן הזה, אמן.
תודה חנה על הסרט. האם יש שאלות, הערות? Are there any questions or comments? Vlad, straight ahead.
מכן פרייגן auf יידיש, אפשר לשאול בעברית.
Ich bewillt, als ich so reden auf Yiddish, weil ich reden auf Yiddish. Ich würde gewollt, ich habe gehört, zwei Redner, was haben geredet.
לא שומעים אותך.
Ich habe gehört von zwei Rednern, was haben geredet von seinen Büchern. Nur ich weiß, dass wir kann kaufen die Bücher. Ich habe Pfreidel hat nicht gesagt, und sie sagt nicht, wie wir können kriegen die Bücher.
Let me answer for Pfreidel.
Ich habe gehört, was ich habe gehört, auf allem Wissen, und es ist von einer Historie, was Pfreidel hat erzählt, als ich habe nicht gewusst von die Sachen und ich trachte, als wir so alle wissen von dem. Wie kann man kriegen die Bücher?
If you look in the bag that you received when you came to the conference, there is a prospect of Freidel's book with an email and information on how to purchase the book, which is going to be published very soon.
Ich habe mein Buch bis noch nicht geendigt. Also wir können nicht kaufen, aber ob ihr wollt jetzt ein Exemplar, eider ich verwendet im Schreiben, kann man mir postet schreiben ein Blitzbrief oder anklingen zu Levikois und ich kann euch zuschicken, ob ihr wollt. Aber ich habe nur geschrieben bis heute 3 Kapiteln und ich darf schreiben 8. Ist bald.
Okay, I would like to remind everyone that this evening... Oh.
Bist du derweil die einzige da in Land, was führt an mit solchen Klassen, sondern da noch Lehrer Hannes in Israel?
Nein, zum Bedeuren ist da nur ein Lehrer in Hanne in Land. Ja, nu, ich hoffe... Ja. Aber du wirst einteilnehmen in der Konferenz in Levikois beim Sof von dem YiDiSH wegen Lehrerei und ich hoffe, mit solchen Konferenzen kann man öfter verinteressieren andere Menschen, welche kennen schon Yiddish, euch zu lernen. Ich darf euch zeichnen, als mein Schwer, Daniel, helft mir euch sehr Sach und euch mein Mann, Asaf, lernt, hat mit mir gemacht den Film. Also ich führe diese Projekte, nicht allein, aber ich bin die einzige Lehrerin und ich hoffe es ja, ich kann verinteressieren andere zu tun, dieselbe Sachen. Derweil ist euch eine von den Siebes, für was ich habe sehr gewollt reden heint. Efter da mit noch eine Lehrerin Hanna da in Karl. Ja, also.
I'd like to remind you that this evening at 7:30 there's going to be a musical performance from students of the Academy of Music and Dance here in Jerusalem, and the performance is going to be based on classical Yiddish texts. And so we invite everyone. Hayom ba'erev yesh hofa'ah מוזיקלי מאת התלמידים של האקדמיה למוזיקה ולריקוד בירושלים, ואנחנו מזמינים את כולם שוב לראות תלמידים בגילים קצת יותר גדולים, students that are a little bit older who will be putting on a Yiddish presentation, music and singing. Yes, I think there's another question.
Ich habe sehr neu gehabt von dem. Dank. Und geh weiter mit dem. Alle haben neu gehabt. Ja, ich meine, es ist eine wichtige Sache. Es ist gut und es gibt die Kinder ein Interesse zu Tonsachen. An Ende 7 ich weiß nicht wegen Heint, aber mit 10 Jahren zurück in Kiryat Sanz in Netanya bin ich gewesen in einem pädagogischen Center von den Zanzer Chassidim. Und dort haben sie gehabt Winklach, wo die Kinder sind zugegangen und gemacht sich wie der Seucher und der Koine und gekäuft. Also solche Sorten Aktivitäten.
Ja.
Es kann sein, dass Heint ist noch alles durch, ich bin nicht sicher, darf es euch forschen. Und ich bin sicher, dass bei anderen Chassidim, sie Satmar, sie Belz, sind euch Frauen solche Sorten pädagogische Aktivitäten. Wir dürfen sehen, was sie haben.
Ja, sicher, in die chassidische Schulen sein in solche Aktivitäten, versteht sich, ist es eine andere Sache, weil sie lernen sich heute ein bisschen Yiddish von daheim, und sie haben nicht dann von Null, von das Nei, aber, und sie sagen euch mit weltlichen Kindern, viele in der weltlichen Schule in Israel sind nicht alle Kinder weltliche, aber in einer gerufener weltlichen Schule ist es, ich weiß, etwas anderes. Aber ich bin sehr interessiert zu wissen. Ich bin dort in Land 2 Jahre ungefähr. Es sicher sind da andere Sachen, was ich kenne nicht. Ich will sehr wissen. Ich will so sein andere Lehrer, was wollen lernen euch. Sicher, ob ihr wollt, schickt mir einen Blitzbrief mit etwas.
Vlad, Pfreidel would like to make another comment over here.
Two comments, actually. To my knowledge, I don't know, is Max Dunitz in the audience? Max.
Yes.
Max was the consultant for Yiddish in the Misrad HaChinukh. And to my knowledge, there were quite a number of Yiddish high schools that taught Yiddish.
Sure, high schools. We're talking about elementary schools.
I just wanted to make clear because people asked if there are other schools. And the other item I think I would like to comment on is the fact that the extreme Orthodox who use Yiddish as a language in the school are essentially not teaching Yiddish. And it's a very big difference, and I think we have to be clear on it. It's true all over the world. Yiddish is not taught. Yiddish is used as the lingua franca in a lot of Orthodox schools, but they find it an anathema to talk about Yiddish literature, to teach Yiddish as a language. It's something that they are not looking to do. They use it for other reasons, which we all know. And I think it's commendable that they teach in Yiddish, but I think there's a big difference and we have to be aware of it.
Yeah, it's a completely different project, and to teach in Yiddish versus teaching Yiddish. As much as I try to teach communicatively and not be overly didactic, it is, of course, introducing the children to a brand new language. And it's very different from simply teaching literacy for a language that they know. I think that's all the time we have. Yes. Ich meine so, ein großen Dank.
Thank you. Coffee and cake outside.